Jack. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Let me help. If your child needs a dad, I can help.
This is Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. We're joined today by the CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia. Maria Howard is here in studio with us. And on today's show, we're talking about the value of volunteers, how they connect with the society, and the strong role that they play in supporting the community on this journey of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Now, our next guest is joining us on the phone today. I understand he's quite the busy guy. Robert Piazantine is the first vice chair on the board of directors for the Alzheimer's Society of BC. It's a big job, and it's also a volunteer job. So, Robert, thanks for calling in today.
Thanks very much for having me, Joanne.
So I know you have an extensive background in corporate and commercial law, and those are some of the skills that you bring to the table for this position. Can you just tell us a little bit, maybe a little bit more about yourself and how your experience is relevant to your board position?
Sure. So, yeah, I'm a practicing lawyer. I've been working in-house for the last number of years, providing sort of an oversight governance / role with respect to the company that I'm at. And that's given me a fair amount of experience in terms of managing risk and managing opportunities for my company, which is something that I thought would be useful to bring to the society when the opportunity presented itself to join the board, because it was, through the analysis of different issues from a risk perspective, through the evaluating and guiding and advising our current board or my clients, such that they are, in all the issues that they face. I thought it brings a lot of the same skills that you need to provide to the society or to any organization when you're on a board in terms of the governance and that risk assessment side of things.
Sounds like you're the key guy to have. And a question that I normally ask most of the guests on this show is if you have a personal connection to Alzheimer's disease, and what would that be?
I do, yeah. My dad was diagnosed with dementia, which then the diagnosis was eventually changed to Alzheimer's over 8 years ago now. And subsequent to that, then I found out that two of his sisters and one of my dad's brothers also have either Alzheimer's or some form of dementia as well. And so it's got a very close connection in my family to the disease. And when my mother's been sort of dealing with my dad's illness as it got worse, and we interacted with the Alzheimer's Society in terms of the support groups and the different functions and different opportunities available for support there, that made me become a lot more interested and a lot more knowledgeable about what the Alzheimer's Society did, and that sort of led me to where I am now.
So tell us a little bit about that first connection you made with the society. Is it just a phone call saying, hey, we're dealing with this? And
yeah, the initial introduction was my mother. We helped my mom sort of contact the society. They were in Nanaimo, or they are in Nanaimo, and figure out how, what was available from a support perspective and how she could benefit, and what was available for my dad as well, because at the time my dad was living at home. And then from there, I wasn't in Nanaimo with my mom when she attended the actual sessions that were available. But from there, I sort of did more research and then eventually started participating in some of the functions locally here in Vancouver, whether it was the walk or the Breakfast to Remember. And then it was through the Breakfast to Remember that I met Andy Shaw, who's one of my fellow board members now, and he and I started speaking at great length about the society and what ways I could contribute more. And that's eventually how he introduced me to Maria and how I eventually joined the board through that avenue.
That sounds wonderful. You made some great contacts there at that Breakfast to Remember.
Absolutely, yes.
So tell us a little bit, Robert, about the role of the board of directors within the society.
Sure. So our role, like most boards really is, in a volunteer society anyway, is really one of governance and I guess strategic advice. I mean, we're here to provide an oversight role for Maria and her team, for the executive team to run the society. We're not running the society. We don't have any sort of involvement in the day-to-day operations, but we're there to provide that oversight, to provide that guidance as we go through those strategic decisions, to figure out what are the long-term objectives, how do we as a board help Maria and her team achieve those objectives, and what support do they need in order to continue to grow the society, to make sure that it's actually achieving its mandate, which is helping those affected by Alzheimer's and other dementia, what ways we can contribute in a meaningful way while sort of keeping our hands out of the day-to-day running. And it really is, it's providing that high-level support throughout that process, while being, at the same time, being critical in terms of evaluating the steps that are being taken, so that we're not just sort of sitting on the sidelines. We actually are looking at what's going on and making sure that we're comfortable with the direction that everything is going, and that it's not sort of going off the rails or the focus has been on the wrong thing as it moves forward.
So on previous shows, and Maria Howard she's a constant. She's as much of a host on this show as we are, and she has talked a lot about some of those strategic priorities for the Alzheimer's Society. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about that process of how you shape or steer or support those priorities from your perspective? Like, how do you get everybody on the same page?
Sure. So I know we do have periodic strategy sessions through which we'll, as a board and with Maria and her team, the senior leadership team, we go through what the proposed priorities are, or what the priorities, if they've been established, already. We go through them and evaluate whether those priorities are being met. Are they off the mark in some way? Do they need to be refined? Do they need to be redone completely? Like, go through a fairly robust analysis of what's been done and what needs to be done to continue to grow the society in the right direction. And we do that through those strategic sessions, where I know in my time with the board, which is now about a year and a half that I've actually been on the board proper, we've had two of those sessions. One was an all-day session on a weekend, and then another one was a few hours after a board meeting, where the all-day session, we spent a lot of time and did a very deep dive into the priorities that were established. Our current priorities were established before I joined the board, but to do a very deep dive into where we were at. And then from there, we sort of evaluate them as you move forward. And we did that in the following session, which followed a board meeting to effectively assess whether we've made progress, have we regressed, all that sort of analysis as a board. And then what I've tried to do, and all of my fellow board members, I'm sure follow the same sort of tack, is all the decisions that we take, and every sort of opportunity that's presented at a board meeting or in another context, whether in a committee meeting or something else, is generally going to be assessed in light of those strategic priorities. Is this opportunity, or is this question that's being asked and the decision that needs to be made, is it going to be something that will further those strategic priorities? Will it affect them in a negative way, or, and sort of analyze it in that way? And we try to support Maria and her team to make sure that we're providing even-handed and hopefully fair advice or guidance when we're presented with those sorts of opportunities, and it works out well when there is discussion on it. We've got sort of a debate about differing views on whether something is a good idea or works within the priorities or does not work within the priorities, because it allows us to sort of flesh those issues out and make sure we've dealt with all of the risks and the other issues in enough time that Maria and her team then have the opportunity to actually do something meaningful with it, so they can take the information that they've got from us and craft it into something that will work from a very hands-on perspective for the society.
How many board members are there?
That's a good question.
And are they all volunteer positions?
They're all volunteers. I think we've got 12.
13. I think there's
board
13.
Members?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't got the exact number, but they're all volunteers. And we've got, it's a fairly diverse board. But yeah, they've all been on for varying lengths of time. I know there's a handful that have been on longer than I have, but we've had about 2 or 3 members that have joined since I've join the board. So it's a fairly diverse board, and it's a fairly active board in terms of involvement with the executive in providing that guidance and that oversight role.
Well, Robert, it sounds like a fairly intense position, quite a demanding position. It also sounds like a time-consuming position. I'm wondering how much time that is required from you as a volunteer board member, and I'm wondering what you get out of this.
It is there is a fair amount of time involved. That's, I would expect, sort of a given. I mean, you can't expect to join a board of any organization and just pretend that you're not going to have to do anything. I mean, it's a requirement. If you're willing to make that commitment, you're going to need to be prepared to spend some time. I don't know how much time I've actually spent, because it's kind of like, you do an hour here, an hour there over the course of a few weeks, and it sort of, it adds up over time. But it's the type of work that generally, from my perspective, as I mentioned, I've got a connection to the illness itself, and so it's the type of thing where I'm not overly fussed about the time that I need to put in to help, because I see the benefit directly to my family of the work that the Alzheimer Society is doing. And this is one way that I can contribute in a meaningful way to the overall mission of the society, and it gives me sort of some personal satisfaction in that, I know that I've got a certain set of skills that I can use in a way that's helpful to the society.
And they need you to use them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, as a volunteer organization, they're relying on volunteers with, a huge range of skills in order to do what they need to do. Yes, there are, the key roles within the organization that they've staffed, but you still need all those different areas of help. And if I can provide some of that help, then I'm all for that.
So, Robert, is there anything else that you wanted to share today about the Alzheimer's Society?
I think the work that the Alzheimer's Society has been is excellent. They work hard. They've got a great group of people there to develop the approach to help those suffering from Alzheimer's and to help the caregivers of those suffering from Alzheimer's and other dementia. And the number of volunteers that they have is excellent, and they are all exceptional volunteers. And I think it's a privilege to be involved with them. And it's been a great blessing for me ever since I started.
Thank you very much for sharing your story today.
Thanks, Joanne. I appreciate it.
Robert Piazantine is a volunteer vice chair on the board of directors with the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia. We're highlighting volunteers behind the scenes on today's show, along with CEO Maria Howard. There's a lot more to talk about and to learn, of course. If you would like any more information about Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, please visit the website at alzheimerbc.org. Next, we're going to meet more volunteers on Boomer Life on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.